This lesson is about locating components in a window at specific locations and with a specific size. If you're the kind of person that greases your own car, then listen up. This is your lesson. It's a very simple thing to do, really. I'll start off with the simplest possible approach and then show you how to spiffy it up a bit. This make panel method creates a panel, and then instead of replacing the default layout manager with another one, a null argument is passed to set layout, which simply removes the layout manager. Without a layout manager, all the sizing and positioning must be done explicitly, and that's what happens in this method. A button is created and has its size and positions set. The first two values are its X and Y positions. The last two are the width and height. The same things are done with the second button and then with a third. Nothing moves. Everything stays the same size and in the same position. Because of the lack of a layout manager, it was necessary to set the size of the panel, because no size calculations are going to be made with a layout manager missing. The result looks like this. As you can see, everything is right where we put it. Doing it this way, there's nothing to prevent you from overlapping components and even placing them outside the display area. You can be very specific and get just exactly what you want. Another approach to getting your own way is to create your own layout manager. It's easy to do, and with your own layout manager you can make things work just exactly the way you want them to. Here's an example of a simple layout manager. It's one that I've used a few times. Now this is called the XY layout manager because you still have to specify the X and Y positions of the components, but the layout manager handles the window sizing and all the components are displayed in their preferred size. Notice that layout manager is actually an interface, not a class. That means that to create a layout manager, it's only a matter of implementing the required methods defined in this interface. Most layout managers keep an internal list of components, and these two methods are called to insert and delete members of the list. This layout manager doesn't keep a list, so these methods don't do anything. This method is called to determine the minimum size of the window after it's laid out. This layout manager doesn't ever move any of the components, so it just figures out the smallest possible window size that can display all of them. This call to get component count returns a count of the number of components in the window. This loop executes once for each component in the window. The dimension object returned from this method contains the height and width of the component. The location of each object is retrieved in the form of a point object, which holds the X and Y values. Using these values, it's possible for this loop to determine the rightmost and bottommost edges of the contained components. With that information, it's easy to determine the height of the window required to display them. And those values are returned in the form of a dimension object. Now, in this layout manager, the preferred size is the same as the minimum size, so the preferred layout size method simply returns the results from the minimum layout size method. If we wanted, we could add something to the preferred layout size to allow for borders around the edges, but this is a simple layout manager and it only has one size. Now this method is called to perform the actual laying out of the components. The layout manager only works with this minimum size, so there's no need to even check if the container's window is large enough or too large or whatever. This loop sets each component to its preferred size. Other things could be done. For example, things could be made a bit more fancy by checking for the size of the window of the container and adjusting the positions of the components so there's a little margin all the way around. Anyway, as simple as it is, it's a fully operational layout manager. Here's a program that uses it. A new XY layout manager is constructed and inserted into the panel to be the layout manager for this panel. 4 buttons and 1 label are constructed inside the method, assigned an XY location, and added to the panel. Note that no information about the size of the window is specified anywhere. If the layout manager does its job, not only will all the components be displayed at their specified locations, they will all be allowed to assume their preferred sizes, and the window should be sized so they all just exactly fit. Looking at this, it would probably have been a good idea to add the code to the layout manager to insert a little margin around the components, but you get the idea. That's all we're going to do with layout managers in this course. There are quite a few more, but the ones that are shown here are the ones that first appeared in Java and are somewhat representative of the others. But you know how to use them, and you can look them up in the documentation and try them for yourself.